Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to this live stream. I was having a chat with Mr. X next door, and I was thinking, you know what? We were talking about social media,
Yep, we were.
life before social media. So on my channel, I've been talking about zombie scrolling, and speaking about the effects of social media destroying, your ability to focus.
Mm.
You take a picture of a bunch of friends, what are they doing?
Always on the phone.
Always on the phone, chilling out. So I feel like those of us who didn't weren't brought up on social media, we adopted it later in life because it developed, right?
Yep.
In a way, we're more developed as humans. What do you think? What do you think?
Now, in terms of focus, I would tend to agree because as an educator, I see the young minds in school, they're always on the phone. Any opportunity to get on the phone, even within the class, if possible, they would use their phone.
Yeah.
So obviously, a particular teacher speaking about something they're not interested in doesn't really matter to them. So it's no surprise that they'll try to use a phone. They're always sneaking their phone under the table.
Yeah.
Break times, lunch times. I recall back in the day, we used to go play football and the boys would wrestle or play fight. But what I've noticed now in schools is that lunch and break time, you see a lot of them just on their phones, recording for TikTok or speaking to someone. So it's really unfortunate. They cannot focus or concentrate without these devices, unfortunately.
Absolutely. Zoomzilla, yes, non-Muslims can come on, no problem at all. Most welcome. Everybody's most welcome. You know, you said this about school, right? I was thinking, I mean, you're obviously you have a master's in linguistics, but what do you teach? Like, what's your teaching thing?
Oh, at the moment, I'm teaching mathematics.
Mathematics, okay, maths, right?
I'll try to teach mathematics.
So let's stick with this, right? You want to teach vector spaces. It's your first lesson, right? Or middle indices, something simple like chemistry type of thing. Just before that lesson, you have a student who was on TikTok at break, scrolling through half-naked women, fast cars, jokes, pranks, massive, dopamine spikes. And now you are trying to explain vector spaces. Is he going to concentrate?
Now, it'll be exceptionally difficult to concentrate. That's the reason why it's good practice within the classroom to have a starter. The starter generally consists of things they can do fairly easily. So if you are teaching mathematics, you'll get them to start on, let's say, fractions or basic linear algebra.
Build it up.
So it allows them the first 5 minutes, calms them down, reduces their
something
excitement.
easy,
something easy, ease them into lesson, and then you can start off from there. But regardless, it's an uphill struggle. Really, it's very difficult to have this particular generation
it's hard.
Focus on a particular content.
Absolutely, it's very, very hard. I'm going to give the link to anybody that wants to join. Today, we want to speak about zombie scrolling. We want to speak about social media misuse, other topics as well. You know, we were talking about actually intellectualism in the Muslim community, or lack of, or in fact, an attack on intellectualism, right? Like, let's just attack intellectualism. Let's just, that kind of thing. Muslims, okay, I'll give you an example.
Yep.
As an educator, I want you to just think of this. I met a brother, and the brother wasn't practicing before, completely off the deen. Then he started practicing, and he just went on the deen strong. His son wants to study physics, and he said, no, I want him to go to madrasa and learn the Quran. I don't want him to learn physics. And I said, Akhi, you should allow your son to. He was like, for him, no, I want him to study Quran. What would you say about this situation? Would you say this is a one-off, or is this a problem that we have, where we start to think, no, we want them to learn Islam, and this about physics or the world, that's not knowledge. What do you think as an educator? How does it make you feel? Firstly,
well, I'd like to put my feelings aside for most things, as you know, but this is not really an anomaly.
Okay.
I think most of us, or most parents that I've come across, and obviously this is a anecdotal evidence. A lot of people, a lot of parents, they love to live their dream through their children.
Yeah.
So those that wanted to become footballers, what they do, they push their children to being footballers. Those that wanted to become professional fighters, they do the same thing. And it's no surprise, obviously, someone who's religious, who has seen certain irreligious activities prior to practicing, they would like their kids to be religious, and not just that, go a level beyond that and educate themselves within the Islamic sciences. So that is a noble intention, no doubt about it. However, the question I would have is, how successful would one be if they were forced to study something that they don't like?
That's the key question. Yeah. Something they don't like, right? Something they hate.
Because it's very difficult to, sorry to interject, so it's very difficult to excel to a high level in a field that you despise or you dislike.
And what's interesting, that's a really brilliant point. What's interesting is sometimes, in order to be successful in life, not sometimes, you have to build a habit of doing what you don't like. And a lot of studying, I mean, okay, let's just take something like you change fields, chemistry to linguistics.
Yeah, chemistry, mathematics to linguistics, yes.
Chemistry, mathematics, linguistics, okay?
Yep.
So you're doing, going back however many years, you're back at uni, you're back at UCL, you're doing, you did mathematics there, right?
Yeah, chemistry with mathematics.
Chemistry and mathematics, okay. You're doing something which you may have initially had passion for, but now, okay, give me a topic in mathematics which is kind of like difficult.
I think, to be honest with you, mathematics is very, what do you say? If you don't understand all of it's difficult. But if you understand it, it's fairly.
Okay, so let's stick with something like integration.
Yeah.
It's like A levels type of thing. Okay. The fact is, when you are doing integration exercises through a book, it seems very easy and you know, that kind of thing. But when you get to uni, now you're dealing with, because what is mathematics, right? Mathematics is pure philosophy. It's the purest form of philosophy. Bertrand Russell, mathematician, philosopher. So it's the purest logic. It's the purest thing. Okay, now, how on earth are you expected to focus on that when you have a device which you can just jump on and it will give you all this free dopamine, cheap dopamine, but in order for you to get dopamine from, you know, learning something abstract, you're only going to get a small amount after a lot of effort. So it's almost like, okay, you got crack cocaine here, right, on the phone, and here you got like a tiny bit of sugar. Yeah, it is like that, isn't it? So how are people going to be successful?
We try to foster resilience within education, and it's very important for young minds, especially through primary and then into secondary school, to build that resilience. And you try to, they're not intrinsically motivated, you try to use certain things about the future, or you can get a better job. But then again, even that doesn't really work in our day and age, because you'll find a lot of people that are successful on social media or in sports, and a lot of their role models have not gone through the education route to be successful in life and to be famous and rich and whatnot. And so it's really hard to motivate them.
It's really hard to motivate them, but it's also a case of maybe when we were at university, social media wasn't so big. And it wasn't like you walk out of class or in class, the only thing you could really distract yourself with was a book, a friend, whatever. The idea of just jumping onto TikTok and Zoom scrolling, doom scrolling, zombie scrolling wasn't there.
Yep, the option was not available.
And that allowed minds to develop over time with lower levels of dopamine.
Yeah, you have to
I find young people very irritable, easily.
No, I agree with you. Even the worst thing you could do to some of the students I have is just put them in a room and let them speak to each other. It's almost a nightmare. So literally, it's a very human thing to do, to communicate, as Chomsky says, is what's it called? This part. It's just innate nature, and this is what really differentiates us from the animal kingdom, the different species in the animal kingdom. But even that's become really difficult. People can communicate very easily and freely on social media. I say communicate, but they can exchange some level of information. But to sit there and speak to one another is actually very challenging for a lot of these kids.
So look, we're talking. our speech has words, but it has body language,
Yep.
it has tone, it has physical proximity, it has all these non-verbal cues. Young people will go online and run and this and that, and then when they're face to face with each other, they cannot communicate.
Yeah.
And they'll be brave online, but one-to-one, they can't resolve problems, they can't have difficult conversations. There's one person, I was watching this on BBC or somewhere, you know, he could not go to a coffee shop and order a coffee. That's how socially dyslexic he became. And that's happening, right?
No, that is very
people
possible.
are losing this ability to do things.
No, it is very possible for that to happen. And we see because I teach at a certain level where I see the early development of into adulthood. So you do see that difficulty, really.
Absolutely. The people who have joined the chat, can you please post your questions where the private chat is, so we can select who we're going to jump onto the stream. So today we're talking about zombie scrolling, but this is obviously linked to intellectualism in the Muslim community, which is a hugely important topic, right? We were talking about this. Now, going back to that story I gave of someone that wanted their son to study physics.
Yep.
Study Quran rather than studying physics, right? Not only do we have the challenge of social media dumbing down brains, making people stupid, essentially, right? On top of that, in the Muslim community, we don't have an intellectual drive. Like people who become quote unquote religious, they think, okay, I just want like you said, my child to do what I didn't do. But when it comes to, say, studying the world, studying biology, chemistry, physics, linguistics, psychology, fossils, whatever, they don't think this could be ibadah, or this could help Islam, or this is something good. It's almost like the only thing that's good is, the only beneficial knowledge is this very restricted box. How would you respond to that?
Well, I think it's actually very easy to respond to it. Anything that benefits the community at large, within especially the Muslims, the Ummah, obviously it will fall under Fard al-Kifaya, so which is a communal obligation.
Yeah.
So scholars would mention doctors, engineers, etc. The community needs them. So it is obligatory. It's a communal obligation, such that it requires a certain number of individuals to do it, so that the community can function and get on with their worldly activities. Right? Obviously, I can understand from one point of view that is we as Muslims believers, the focus should be on the hereafter, etc. However, while we are on this earth, we also need to be able to establish a certain level of living, let's just say, for lack of a better word. So, and the example you mentioned, I wouldn't be too harsh on the brother unless we know all the factors involved in reaching such conclusion.
Okay, so
that's what we need to just.
Yeah,
I would like to explore that.
But to make an assumption, let's say we get into his brain, and then we see the reason is because he has put knowledge into compartments, and one of the compartments is dunya, and everything, physics, chemistry, maths, biology, is there, and then he's put Islam, and in Islam it's simply the Quran and it's other Islamic sciences and things like this. How would you respond to that as an educator? How would you convince a parent, actually, no, Muslims should be educated, and learning about the world is something good?
Yeah, of course. To be fair, this is, I would say, it's not an easy question and requires unpacking, as in you have to have a multifaceted approach to it. But for just to put certain ideas down, if we look at the scholars of jurisprudence, which is fiqh, they relied heavily on doctors to come to certain conclusions. So there is no contradiction between, say, worldly knowledge and Islamic knowledge. So this dichotomy can be sometimes a false one in our heads, I would say.
Okay, that's fine. That makes a lot of sense. So people who are jumping on the stream, please post your questions here, and we can try and answer them. There's actually a question I wanted you to answer how do you overcome social anxiety? Now, this is important. When you're an educator, especially dealing with students of a certain age, you're not there to just put information in their head. You're there as a second parent. You're there to motivate them. You're there to make them think in a positive way. You're there to make them more sociable and this type of thing. I'm sure you must have seen, like in the class, there's essentially a myriad of ways you can explain where someone is from a social perspective. This person is very social, but in certain contexts he's not.
Yep.
But generally, I would say social anxiety is a problem.
Yep, it happens.
A teenager walks into a room where people he doesn't know, acts very different now than they did 20 years ago.
Anecdotally, I'll say yes.
Yeah. So there would be a level of social skills which are missing.
Yep.
Because of you could not 20 years ago, you could not spend all day in your room because there'd be nothing to do.
Yeah, exactly. We bored to death, yeah.
But now you're on Discord, you're talking, and you're doing these types of things.
You're communicating virtually all day, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then you forget to communicate in the real world. So I'll come back to this particular question about to answer within the classroom setting.
Yeah.
Obviously, educators are encouraged to empower students, give them opportunities to contribute to the classroom. So what you try to build the confidence and the resilience of the pupils within the classroom.
Yeah.
This can be done in several ways. One of the ways which encourages to pose questions, because what tends to happen is if you're teaching any subject, you would get the same individuals answering over and over again. So they encourage random selection of students. So you have to randomize things. You can't just pick those up with the hand up, because the ones that put the hand up tend to be the confident ones, the ones that are excelling in that particular subject. So you have to pick individuals randomly, and then you'd work out very, very quickly those that are anxious, those that don't like to contribute to the classroom discussions.
And they're the ones you got.
Yeah, you need to now start developing rapport with them. And high rapport, high challenge, as one of my colleagues says. And I think it's very true. Once an educator builds a high rapport with an individual, then you can challenge that particular pupil to a much higher level.
Absolutely. That's a great way of answering it. Let's go to Brother Hunter. What's your question, brother? Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Where are you calling in from?
Calling in from Italy.
Oh, nice. So what's your question, brother?
My question was about the like sometimes on social media, like on Twitter especially, you see like sometimes guys who are like on Islamic pages, Islamic content related, like they have a lot of opinions that they just might have heard somewhere, like sometime out of context, and they like preaching that as if that's like the only opinion, like you know, like I don't know, but it's like they don't know the full picture, and then they go out and say like one specific thing, and they like fight for that thing, and they like argue against others, and there's like a whole comment section full of that stuff. So like, do you think on social media, is this like a way to like gain knowledge? Is it like from social media, or should you like gain knowledge from outside and then like talk about it on social media? Like,
all right, brilliant. Thank you so much, Hunter, for that question. That's actually a very interesting question from Brother Hunter. How would you answer that question? Because I think that is a broad question. Is it online or is it offline information that we're looking for?
This is definitely a very, very pertinent question. This comes back to, again, understanding what I guess you speak about Islamic stuff, so we'll tackle that, is understanding the Islamic sources. So if one understands the source of legislation and how they were codified within the schools of thought. So we have obviously the four schools of thought, which I'm sure everyone's aware of. You have the Hanafis, predominantly in the Asian communities of subcontinent, Turkey, etc. You have the Malikis in North Africa, Morocco, Tunisia, Mauritania. You have the Shafi'is, and you have the Hanbalis. So if one has has put in certain time and effort into acquiring knowledge, and he's aware and he's following a particular opinion, a reputable opinion found within the schools, and it's not a shared opinion in the sense that it is an anomaly and people completely reject it, then there'll be no harm in sharing that with the community, on whichever platform you would like to share with it. However, imposing your opinion on issues which such that khilaf mu'tabar, they say, which is an acceptable level of difference, then it's not allowed. Coming back to how do you seek knowledge, so depends what you mean by social media. You'll find many scholars, many students of knowledge are on social media regularly sharing their videos or linking their website. So to have an absolute answer for it would be ridiculous, I would say. However, one has to be measured. So as a principle, seek knowledge, learn knowledge from scholars. Obviously, you trust reputable scholars that are known for being upright, known for following the sunnah. And then it's not rocket science in the sense that you can learn what you need for your worship, what you need for your family, what you need for your transaction, etc., etc. And you can suffice with that. And if social media, human beings are naturally addicted and attracted to controversy. So if it's not about Islamic controversy, it will be about something else. And that is the whole idea. You will rarely find two individuals sitting together talking about something boring, mundane. It's always about controversy. He said, she said, or do you know what so and so said? And then when Islamic feels like, oh, so and so is an innovator, or so and so is this, and let's talk about it. So this is part of human nature. So you have to understand this. So the Muslims are no different to other human beings in this regard. We are humans after all. So you have to be measured. So seek knowledge, obviously offline with scholars that are reputable, trustworthy, etc., with the conditions laid out, and strive in noting down and developing and reading. And from there, if you'd come across issues on social media, then you would understand, you'll be able to weigh these what do you call issues? Are they really that pertinent? Are they primary issues? Are they secondary issues? Are they subsidiary issues? Etc., etc. So I think I waffled on too long.
No, it's good.
To summarize, principally seek knowledge from the scholars that are trustworthy, and from there you should develop.
Absolutely. And it's kind of like, if you want to learn, I don't know, you got allergy, right? You go to a lab, you find out, here's my allergy, here's my blood sample, here's the allergies I have. You go to the chemist, you go and get the medicine, whatever it is. You're going to reputable sources.
Yeah.
You're not going on social media and some guy says, oh, I've got this spot on my face. Like, what do you think I have? I think you have a hay fever allergy. I think you're nobody in their right mind goes to a unverified, unjustifiable source for their personal health or whatever. When it comes to the deen, right, then it's fine. Who's this guy? I don't know, but he said this. Like, literally, I've heard some people, bro, say, when they're trying to give evidence or they're trying to make a point, they said so and so said this. And it's like, who cares?
Yeah.
Who is so and so? Do you see my point?
Yeah. And obviously, some people would probably laugh at the irony of Mr. X, an unnamed individual, giving advice. So it is quite laughable in that sense. But yes, once again, the advice, the reason why Mr. X exists is my opinion, or anybody's opinion that's not a reputable scholar within the religion, doesn't really hold much weight. And then even within the scholars, if it is, the religion is saved through the sources, and we have to consider whether there's ijma', the consensus on, etc., etc. So it's a complicated issue, but we all face it. But having said that, when it came to COVID, to be fair, many people were getting their information from social media. So when trust is lost, when there's a loss of trust, between the reputable individuals and the masses of the society, then these sort of things tend to happen to them.
Yeah, people start to think, but then those same people, they'll flipping, what's that thing to get rid of COVID? Some chemical that was being promoted.
That's it.
There's some sort of weird chemical that was being promoted. Yeah, so that's the danger, that people don't go to the sources with anything, and they start doing these things. Now, here's an interesting question: what is missing in the dawah work being done today? So, in terms of Mr. X, you, I would say, have a good grasp of the back end of the dawah, because you know a lot of the du'at on a personal level.
Yep.
Right. Spend time with them. So you're not really on social media yourself, but you're in the back end with the brothers, right? You've seen what happens online, you've seen conversations offline, and you've seen other people who you don't interact with, but you know that in the dawah where they are. What would you say to this question? Because I think that's what we were discussing next door a little while ago, right? What would you say to the answer to this question?
It's a very, very difficult question. To be fair, Asha, I would like to hear your input first, Mr. Sabur,
okay.
if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Then I'll dovetail.
I want you to get a drink. I want you to get a drink because I was feeling thirsty. So I'll warm them up and then you answer it as best as you can. And then by that time I'll go next door and get a drink.
Yep.
So here's what I think, right? Let's carry on with the conversation we were having next door.
Yeah.
People respect somebody who is giving something of value. Okay? Something valuable. Something that, look, people can online, they can see somebody and say, okay, he's giving me something valuable, something which is not petty, something which is which has some substance, and and that will lead to influence. That would lead to you being able to influence people in a good way, and do this type of thing. If somebody was to ask me what is missing in the dawah work being done today, the dawah online, let's just broaden out the dawah to mean Muslims and non-Muslims. The number one thing I would say what is missing is actually social media influencers who are giving out, say, a positive message, or they're teaching things of the basics of the deen. They do not have people following them in large numbers. So, for example, I mean, your area that you're like really interested in and you're good at is Aqidah, right? That's like your thing, right?
Yeah, I would say good at, but yeah.
But that's your area of research or interest. Let's just put it that way, right? Okay. I find it bizarre that people aren't really even interested in this area. Writ large, other than students of knowledge, writ large Muslims. But a Muslim will be interested in 20 verses 8 in Ramadan. They will be interested in moon sighting debates. They will be interested in other types of things. And what I feel is that the core of the religion is not even understood by people. Like, take something like Aqidah, right? If you ask an average Muslim, what does even this word mean? Is there types of knowledge in Islam which are obligatory for you to know to be a Muslim? They don't even know that, but they're super interested in other things. So I believe, what's missing in the work of dawah, even when it comes to dawah to non-Muslims, is sometimes the core of Islam is not taught. And a whole bunch of other issues and the ikhtilaf amongst them is being taught. You gave the example of the Israelites, the black Israelites, right? Maybe that's, I don't know, that's kind of like, I'm giving you a sort of summary of the conversation we had next door. That's the way I would describe it, that, the basics and the good stuff is not being conveyed, yet all this other stuff is being conveyed.
You've touched upon quite a few things. If I had to think about it, and this is a very, very difficult question, I would say the biggest issue, or what we need to do, is one of planning. What do I mean by that?
If you carry on talking to the audience, I'm going to get a drink.
Yeah, go for it.
I'm super thirsty.
What I mean by that is we have tremendous number of du'at that are calling to the way of Allah. They are busy spreading good information, knowledge, etc., etc. However, you do find that at times it's not organized in the sense that people tend to be influenced by things outside our immediate concern. So it's the old question of who influences the influences. So starting again, what he said in terms of what Sabur said with regards to people knowing the fundamentals, obviously we should start from there. We should start from the fundamentals of the religion, so the people are aware of what is required and what is known. And then even if you want to call it what's known from the religion by necessity, i.e. one thing which the Muslims are good at in terms of education is Salah, the 5 pillars of the religion, we say they're good at that. But outside that, there seems to be issues that are subsidiary issues which are made central, and people spend much time and they distract a great quantity or number of the ummah on these subsidiary issues, which I think is unfair. And the brother previously touched upon that, which is what do we do with social media, with brothers or people giving an opinion and then ensuring and forcing people to follow that opinion. So I would say, and this is not, I don't think it's something that can be really resolved, because the social media is very individualistic, and everyone is an independent entity. So there's not like a king or a leader which organizes everything or which can hold people to account. So no one can hold others to account. So everybody's independent. But what I would say, if I was to advise people, is I'll say, number one, check your intention.
Yes.
Why you're doing this particular action. Number two, ask yourself, is this going to benefit me, or is this to achieve a personal victory or a victory for my group? Right. This I don't know if you're aware of. Currently, if you go on Clubhouse of all places, there's a whole war going on between Salafis and Ash'aris and whatnot. And really and truly, the question, and what's going to happen is within a couple of months, I predict this will die down and people will move on from there.
Look how much time is wasted.
Yeah. And so was it really to establish the truth, or is it really for personal victories? And that's what we have to really consider that.
And is it even priority?
That comes back to that again. Is it really important for the laity to know difficult aspects of aqeedah, abstract aspects which require some study on at least ilm al-kalam or falsafa or etc. It does, and how many of those people actually follow it? If it was a private group and they want to engage in that, fair enough. Of course, humans are inquisitive by nature; they're curious, so you shouldn't limit one's capacity to learn and develop.
Yeah.
However, is it something you should open to everyone? Then come back to the speech or the famous quote of Ali ibn Abi Talib, where he said, what do you call it? Speak to people on their level. Do you want
Allah and His Messenger to be rejected? Okay.
So I think that particular advice, if it is heeded, it will take us far.
Sure. I think that's a very good way of putting it. We actually had a religious skeptic on the chat, and I wanted to talk to him. We obviously invite non-Muslims to the chat, and we treat them with respect, and obviously give you priority, because we're here to give dawah, we're here to talk to people. So if religious skeptic, if you want to come back, then please do. Mahad, our brother, assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. How are you guys?
Good. Where are you calling in from, brother? Switch on your camera. Let's see your face. Let's talk to you. Let's talk to you with the camera on. There you go.
How are you guys?
Good. We were talking about non-verbal communication, seeing each other, smiling, body language.
I just don't like to be, have my face shown online in the online space. That's
okay. Oh, okay. Okay, no, that's fine. If you can switch it off if you want. I just generally, you know, when I'm talking to people online, it's to maintain my own level of concentration. If someone's like, if I can't see someone's face, I can't. Maybe you're old school, just can't concentrate.
The first time I've done it's a very weird experience, just speaking to an empty screen.
Empty screen, yeah. So where are you calling in from? You said New York?
Yes.
Nice, brilliant. So what's your question, brother?
So I was rewatching one of your lectures that you gave that I think it's available on Ayura's channel about Islam, evolution, and Darwinism, which, by the way, it was a spectacular lecture. It was one of the key lectures that I've watched back when I was becoming practicing again, and to sort of clear my doubts. And evolution was one of the biggest, I would say, one of the biggest issues which I was struggling with back before I started practicing again. And after watching that specific lecture, it was like just gone, because it was just so well done. And so my question is, like, just the way that you sort of presented your arguments in that lecture, and you sort of, you know, I think stayed consistent from there onwards in how you sort of refute and dismantle Darwinism. So, like, my question is, like, how hasn't Darwinism been challenged in the way you've challenged it at a larger academic scale, considering you basically did it so easily? In my opinion, it's like you just did it like completely, you know, it was just like wasn't even, I mean, it looked like you made it, you know, it was effortless, but yeah. So why do you think that is? Why hasn't it been challenged in like sort of academia since for like, you know, decades or centuries now?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the answer we could find in Thomas Nagel's book, Mind and Cosmos. He's a philosopher who wrote a book published by Oxford nonetheless, right? So like he's an atheist philosopher, and what he talks about is the fact that Darwinism is not a well-established scientific theory based on evidence alone. He says it's a metaphysical research program governing the science. So what it is, Mahad, right? Essentially, today, the way science works, it works on a premise of methodological naturalism, right? Methodological naturalism is we are going to assume every single thing has natural causation. And let's do a thought experiment. I'm going to test this with you, right? Say we right now create a planet, some hypothetical planet, like on some computer simulation. And we have a human being there, like some AI intelligence type of human. And we input in the data of that being, there is no God. Now that being has to explain the giraffe, a blade of grass, a bee, all of life. Is it not going to come up with some sort of naturalistic explanation?
Naturally, yeah.
Why? Why would it come up with naturalistic?
There's no other recourse.
There's no other recourse. This is very important. If you from the onset, you say there is no God, then every single explanation you give has to be naturalistic. Okay? Since science is based on methodological naturalism, then Darwinism is, in fact, the only thing that's going to explain life. This is what you have to keep in mind. Naturalism entails Darwinism. So and this is very important to understand, if there is no God, then everything has to be explained naturalistically. And the simplest naturalistic explanation is life is very complicated. So going back, there must have been fewer, simpler, smaller forms of life. That's it. So this goes back to, there's a Greek thinker who speaks about this. I should have actually taken notes on this. This is going back to the ancient Greeks. And what he basically describes is, he describes some sort of evolutionary theory. Because remember, evolution goes back way before Darwin, right? Because if there is no God, then it's a logical deduction. As a mathematician, you know what that means, right? If there is no God, then the only way you can explain life is via something naturalistic. And Darwinism is the only thing that does that. So what I did in that talk is, especially near the end, you must have seen I speak about naturalism, right? I speak about naturalism. It's the naturalistic belief which forces them to close the doors to all other explanations. So this is why Darwin, because look, this is the way science works. Science doesn't leave a void. You can't have a theory being replaced by nothing. It has to be replaced by a better theory. But if Darwinism has to be replaced by, say, intelligent design as a theory, we have to accept that there is a God, or at least a potentiality that there could be something like a designing force. So the best way I would put it to you is Philip Johnson has written a book called The Wedge of Truth, right? And this book is amazing. In that book, you will see the fundamental problem that we're talking about is not evidence. It's not to do with biochemistry or DNA or fossils or bioinformatics or whatever. It's actually got to do with whether you begin your discussion of biology with the belief that it's all nature, or you begin your discussion of biology with an open toolbox epistemically, which allows natural and supernatural explanations. That is the problem, because what we're taught in school is the toolbox is closed on one side. You can only use naturalistic tools. The theist says, no, we will use naturalistic and supernatural. That's why Darwinism cannot be ever academically removed from science until and unless methodological naturalism is removed. Now, I know I explained it in a long-winded way, but I really want you to understand it's got nothing to do with science. This is a philosophical battle, a metaphysical battle, and that metaphysical battle, it colors the lens by which you look at the data. All data. Watch my debate with Skydive Phil in Speaker's Corner. I put it on Twitter yesterday, right? Ultimately, it all begins off with, what are your fundamental assumptions? That's what matters, okay? I have a course upcoming on Sapiens, which is going to be a detailed course in which I go over the history of naturalism with Darwinism.
When is that?
It's already recorded. They just have to edit it, maybe a few weeks or something, inshallah. But that's the fundamental problem. It's actually a problem to do with naturalism, supernaturalism, not to do with data. You know, add anything to that?
Nope. I know my lane.
No, but still, but I mean, okay. It's to do with ultimately axioms. Like in maths,
yep.
Can you derive Pythagoras' theorem from nothing? I mean, from very basic elements.
What do you mean?
As in, can you derive the formula of a squared plus b squared is c squared, starting off with something else, like a triangle or whatever it is?
Like, obviously, it's from a triangle, so it's measurable, and you can maybe go from data. But with regards to axioms, obviously, you have to assume them. So that in science, in physics,
you have to assume, for example, a right angle.
Yeah.
So
I want to say. I mean, I don't know if this particular example fits, but axioms, yes, you have to. You
have to do something. So that's the problem with Darwinism, Mahad, that a lot of people don't realize just how much philosophy has been built into the system. Last night I was with Paul Nelson, and I'm not sure if you saw, this is part of the series that we have on orphan DNA and other taxonomically restricted genes. And Paul Nelson is a philosopher of biology who's done extensive work on Darwinism and refuting Darwinism. And I have a 7-part series playlist on this channel, which is approximately 10 hours, just on testing universal common ancestry, where it goes over presuppositions, assumptions, sub-assumptions, and philosophical dilemmas for the Darwinists to actually face. So make sure you go to the channel and click on playlist and go to testing universal common ancestry to get in.
One thing I would like to add to actually is, I remember when at university, obviously we took some units on quantum mechanics, and I remember the lecturer, the professor, he said essentially said for about 300-400 years after Newton, classical mechanics reigned supreme.
Yes,
it was given, and it's actually measurable. So you can speed, distance, time, everything you can measure is accurate.
Yeah.
However, at the quantum level, none of that really applied.
Yeah.
And there was a paradigm shift, and then all sort of changes within physics took place, and was the birth of quantum mechanics. So it is very possible within science for a theory or an idea to reign supreme, and then to change or be modified, or at the very least limited in certain scope.
Yeah, absolutely, it can be. Does that answer your question, Mahad?
Yes, thank you so much. Barakallahu feekum. Assalamu alaikum.
Jazakallah khair. Or we could do something like, wait, could do something. So I'm gonna no. We'll carry on for a little while. Okay, so you know what you said about the quantum level, right? Newton's theory was working everywhere, but it failed at the quantum level.
Yeah.
This is something Thomas Kuhn in The Structure of Scientific Revolutions talks about. Newtonian mechanics was immensely successful. Yeah, the quantum level, it broke down. So something can work, but it doesn't mean it's true. Yeah, I think that's the way you can explain it.
It can give explanation. It can explain a lot of things, but not everything necessarily. But the only question I would have then is what data is required for evolution to be modified, you would say, or at least contested. Darwinism.
I would say intelligent design has to be accepted as an alternative, as a theory.
How would that work?
Only if the underlying assumption of methodological naturalism is knocked out. Methodological naturalism stops intelligent design entering the door. If methodological naturalism is not removed, Darwinism will always remain.
But would that have any utility for science?
That's the point. That's the point. Me and Paul Nelson, the series that we did, we went over why it does. Why it actually does. And it does. Because look, essentially what intelligent design does, you have a toolbox and you have the biological world. The toolbox of the theist is naturalistic explanations and intelligent design explanations. The toolbox of the Darwinist only has naturalistic explanations. We can mix and match and use different tools. They can only use a few tools. Epistemically, we're superior. That's the crux of the argument. So we're running out of time now. Let's end it there. How do you think today's session was? Your first or live session? Just off the cuff, Zoom scrolling, a bit of live Q&A, a bit of discussion on philosophy and these things.
Yeah, it's not as daunting as I anticipated. So it's challenging, but not as daunting as I anticipated. So it's not too bad, I'll say.
Not too bad. Okay, good. Let us know what you thought about Mr. X's live, because I've been trying to get him to do live for a while, and it's his first one he agreed to, surprisingly, and alhamdulillah we did it.
It's the first and the last. So
it cannot be the last.
I'd like to announce my retirement.
No, it cannot be. Cannot be. But anyway, everybody, jazakallah khair for watching. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.